Now we're going to transition to a different presentation, the importance of public relating your team. MacKenzie Becker is a former captain of the Coppell solar car team and has been an intern with us for the last few years. She's responsible for talking with our community and media relations for the Solar Car Challenge, and she did a great job with that this past year, especially with the live stream. And then she did this similar jobs in Coppell as well, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about public relating your team. MacKenzie?
Awesome. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Am I good on that front? Perfect. Awesome. I've put together a fun little presentation, so I'll get that shared and I'll get started. I appreciate William for kind of giving me a nice little introduction. But hey guys, it's great to be with everyone again. It's always a good day when I get to spend time with my solar car friends. Yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit on kind of public relating to your team. And if you know me, you know that this is something that is important to me and I really enjoy, and it's an area of interest. But I also think in practicality's sake, it's something that I know I'm pivoting you from kind of a more engineering technical presentation from what you just had, but stick with me because I think this is something that can sometimes be overlooked by both rookie teams and veteran teams, but can really make a huge difference in the experience that you have with your solar car team. So I'll get into it. I'm very excited, but to help make sure we're a little bit more acquainted with one another, William did a great job of introducing me, but again, my name is MacKenzie. Feel free to call me that. I'm currently in my last semester of my senior year of college at Purdue University, which is crazy exciting. I will be earning my degree in industrial engineering, and I do have a minor in communications. A lot of my communications focus has been in public relating as well as communications and organizations and things of that nature. So again, something I tend to stick with and I really love to do. But I am originally from Dallas, Texas, and my very, very first race was back in 2014, which William and Doc and them and Chris may not love to hear this, but that puts me on going on my 8th year of being around the Solar Car Challenge. So I'm working my way up through rookie status. I think that's the goal. So something I love to do, something I've been a part of for a long time. And I'm really excited to kind of be still around helping out. In terms of this presentation, I kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of what I'm going to focus on. I want to start off with just what is public relations. My PR professor would be proud of me for this one, but sometimes I think it's good to just make sure we get an idea of what this means in our context as racers and in the Solar Car Challenge. Before we move into kind of the moneymaker section, right, like the benefits of PR, ask not only what you can do for PR, but what PR can do for you and why we're even talking about it. And I think that's a huge answer I'm ready to give you guys, and I'm excited about it. And lastly, I'll focus on a couple tips and tricks. I may give a couple personal stories throughout some of this to just kind of looking into ways that you can practically improve your PR presence and things you can start thinking about as we get closer to the race and at the race itself. So like I said, stick with me and I promise we'll have a good time here. So what exactly is public relations? Some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may have no idea. The formal definition is a little long and kind of weird, but this is one that I was able to grab from whenever I took PR. And the important part is what I underlined, right? So information from an organization that is going out to the public that is intended to affect their public perception. For everyone's benefit, including my own, I also gave a solar car translation, right? So what this means for us, and that is pretty much anything your team does that reaches an audience that helps develop your reputation as a team. Which can mean a lot of things, both intentional and sometimes unintentional. So do pay attention to kind of how you portray yourself to the public, because it really does make a huge difference. And kind of some more practical examples of this, what PR means for your team. These are just a couple, right? It's a very creative thing and something that you can find different ways to develop PR and public relate to your community. But some of these things I've seen for solar cars, a big one is outreach. This is probably one of my favorite. So anytime you do community events, public outings, you give presentations, things of that nature, that can all be considered public relating in some way, shape, or form. we can, to some degree, have our own version of a press release. So anytime you're like keeping a website and newsletters, blogs, anything that you're kind of putting out there into the world to update your supporters, that can be a really fun way of sharing PR and something that as a team, students can really focus on and contribute to, which is great. Social media, especially for those of us that are knee deep in it all the time, right? Your social media presence is a huge area of PR for you and something that you can really control to generate support and to keep people updated on what you're doing, which can be done really well. And that's kind of an exciting, very creative thing. I have press on here with a little asterisk because sometimes that can also be considered publicity, which is actually a different thing. But when you do interviews, news coverage, any kind of external coverage for your team, you can use that to benefit your PR presence, right? Because it all is kind of information that you are able to use to kind of show the world who you are as a team and what that means. And it's something that you have control over, right? Like what do you want your team to be for the public? But it is something that's going to take a little bit of work, right? Like a lot of these things require effort, require some thought. But in my personal opinion, some of them can be very fun. So these are all just kind of a couple examples of what PR can mean on your team practically. But I think more important and what everybody is always excited about is what does PR do for your team, right? And these are just a few that I'll touch on because personally, I think the list is pretty long. But a positive reputation, this is like essential for a solar car team because what moves mountains in times when you need help is your positive reputation, right? If you need support, if you need sponsors, if you need these things, a lot of the other things on this list, having a positive reputation can really get you there, right? So being able to have good PR, to get great publicity, all these things can benefit your positive reputation and kind of create who you are as a team. And could really take teams that even are brand new teams and make them look really professional, right? And put together. And that's a huge thing. And with that comes support, right? So think about it. Most of us are probably tied to some kind of school district or some kind of school board or things of that nature. When you do things that positively reflect on your school board or your school district, right? Like you're out here doing the incredible and people go, wow, that school district's really got it going on. You're supporting your school district. And in turn, I can almost guarantee you that the school district will then probably want to support you right back. And having that support is essential in what we do. It's really hard when you're alone as a solar car team. And if that's where you are, trust me, I understand. And I know there are others in this community that have been there. But this is a way you can help find support and kind of create that community that you can rely on. And that's really beneficial for your team. There's also professional development as an individual, as a student. I have done things for my team that I never thought I would be able to do as a high school student. Obviously, I gave quite a lot of presentations, but I even did a couple weird things. I was on a radio talk show once talking about solar energy in our cars. That was a unique experience for me. I've done a couple news kind of interviews and things of that nature, which is really exciting as a high school student, which is pretty unique in my opinion, but in general, and I guarantee you for those students out there that are not presenters and don't like it, trust me, I understand. I was just born kind of a little crazy and enjoyed it, I guess. But believe it or not, you will probably be presenting more than once in your lifetime. I can guarantee you in college you'll do it, and more than likely in your career you will too. So getting good at public relations, getting good at presenting, getting good at being able to write and express yourself positively can do a lot of wonders for you in kind of your long-term career. So some good professional development. Attention and confidence. I think I'm going to talk about these together. Confidence for your team, right? Like it feels good to be interviewed and to like look and see what you've done and have something that looks really impressive. And you deserve to feel good about it, right? Because it's super cool. And I think it builds a lot of confidence as a team. And it also can gain you a lot of attention and outside attention, which is great. A personal story that I kind of like that ties in a couple of these is I mentioned that I raced kind of way back when. My last race was in 2018, and that was the cross country race to Palmdale, California. And I was captain that year, and naturally something I cared a lot about was making sure my team looked good when we presented, right? Like I wanted to make sure our team was practiced, put together, and seemed like they had it going on. We knew we weren't always the fastest team out there, and we maybe didn't have all the same resources, but by golly, were we gonna look good, right? Like that was one of our goals. When we would go to events, we'd have a matching tablecloth. We would bring paperweights that were actually just wrenches, but we thought they looked good, right? And we all wore the same outfit, and we really practiced kind of what we would say to make sure we were all on the same page, because we knew that sometimes looking good can mean you are good, right? And it builds that confidence. And we did so in our big oral presentation that we had to give for the race. And we must have done a pretty good job, because at some point, Dr. Marks summoned me at some point on the race and requested that our team did a version of our oral presentation for Arizona State University at one of our stops for a solar expo, which was a huge honor for us. And we did put on our presentation. I think it went pretty well from personal experience, but it was in front of not only the entire Solar Car Challenge, but also representatives from Arizona State and people in the community who were passionate about kind of what we were doing and were excited to learn more, which was, again, a great opportunity, gained a lot of support, positive reputation, got us some attention and some confidence. But also something I love was a year later, after I graduated high school and I came back as an intern, I had judges from the Solar Car Challenge coming up to me, shaking my hand and saying, I remember you. You were that one girl from that team who gave that presentation. You all did so well, and recognized me. I even got a sticker out of it. And while a sticker maybe isn't the only end goal here, it is a pretty good benefit. The idea is that it gives you that positive reputation, that attention, and it retains, right? Like people remember it. So good PR and being able to put yourself out there well, people will remember it. And it brings a lot of value to who you are as an individual, but also to your team. So don't undermine it, right? Like it can actually really do a lot. And I think a big one that a lot of people are probably like, ooh, right, is sponsors, right? I know that that's a big deal. But think if you have a lot of positive PR that you can point to, all these great things, sponsors are more likely to see you and to think, yeah, you must be a great investment because look at all these amazing things you have to show for yourself. And that's a huge thing, right? Always finding ways to attract sponsors and to get them seeing you as a serious and good investment that you are. And I know you are, but make sure you can show the public that you are. And PR is a great way to be able to do that and to gain that publicity and those types of things. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but publicity versus public relations, right? They are two different things. The key thing between them is who's doing it. So publicity is external and public relations is internal. So when you write an Instagram post, it's public relations. When someone goes and takes a picture of you and posts it or interviews you, that's you getting publicity. A lot of times they can go hand in hand, right? So a good PR plan and strategy builds positive publicity. But be careful because publicity is also very powerful, right? I'm assuming a good chunk of you have probably heard the phrase like, all publicity is good publicity. Well, in solar car racing, that is absolutely not true. In fact, bad publicity is oftentimes bad publicity and sometimes worse publicity, right? Good PR, good publicity can build a team, but bad publicity can absolutely destroy one. So be aware of how you're presenting yourself to the public. Every time you go out, especially if you're in your solar car shirt, like know how you're representing your team, because that's huge and has a major impact here. But just know that these are things that kind of work hand in hand together for your benefit as well. So just kind of a little snippet I wanted to touch on because it is also important. And just be careful about how you come off as a team because that is sometimes even more important than how much you want to push who you are. So keep that in mind, but also keep on the hard battle of having good PR and putting yourself out there well. So now that we've established PR's importance, right? Like hopefully you're on my track of mind. You're convinced, okay, I get it. PR is good. Let's do this. The big question is kind of how do we now get into that and what does that look like from a practicality standpoint? Because as a student, sometimes it's a little intimidating, right? You're like, awesome, that's a great goal. but how do I get there? And I think that there's no one way. And I think that for every team that looks a little different, but I'm happy to kind of touch on some areas that I enjoyed focusing on whenever I was a student, and some tips and tricks that I've seen that I can kind of pass on to you guys while we're here. The biggest one is prepare and practice. And if you're rolling your eyes a little bit, I understand. It's because, yeah, of course, prepare and practice. But I know you, students, because I was you, and I remember how much we wanted to drag our feet trying to practice our presentations. I was there. And now, granted, I was a little crazy and I was like, yes, presenting. But I remember our team, okay? So I know that it's really easy to be like, yeah, practice. But no, really, like, you should practice. It's very noticeable. And I think another thing that ties into this is recognizing who on your team does enjoy giving presentations and is naturally good at it, right? Like, I obviously kind of rose in the ranks in this area because it's something that I was passionate about and I happen to be pretty good at it. And you will also have team members of yours and friends, and maybe it's you, or if you're a sponsor, like, be looking for these things and these students to foster kind of that talent and allow them to kind of shine in that way, because having a good person represent you can make all the difference, right? Now, everyone should be developing these skills, but it's okay to sit there and go, oh, this person's really great. Let's let them give this interview. Another personal story kind of on this idea was, I was captain of my team, but I was also head of PR for my team, right? So when we were, for example, back to that cross country race, we would have stops along the way, right? Like little 15-minute breaks or such. And a lot of times they were in towns. And I remember there was one where there was some local news people from this town that were showing up because they were interested in covering the race. And we're pulling up and my friends are driving the car, right? And I don't know if you've ever been in a solar car in July, and if you haven't yet, prepare yourself. But I guarantee you the first thing you want to do when you finish driving is not to immediately talk to somebody who wants to interview you. It is to get air conditioning, get out of that vehicle and get some water, right? So I see them pulling up, I see these news people. It is my job as PR person to hop out and immediately go start talking to these people and interviewing them and interviewing with them so that my team can go take care of the car, right? Like, replace anything that needs replacing, get new water, change the aux battery, do what they need to do. And I'm going to take care of talking to people. So having a PR person, someone designated, or someone that you trust that you know can handle these things, can also be a huge benefit to your team, so that your team can trust that person to get that done and they can focus on other things, right? And that way you're all working together. So that goes into preparing. So have a plan for who talks sometimes, and kind of what that may look like for your team. Another thing is building your brand. I mentioned this when I talked about how we had matching tablecloths, right? But having shirts, logos, a social media presence that you're developing, or whatever that looks like for you, maybe your website or things, have a personality for your team and genuinely take the time to think about it and work on that. I know some teams, if money is a thing, you're maybe not always going to have a big fancy tent, or you'll get there, right? But there are ways to still kind of create this brand for your team, and that can be something that is really recognizable, but also makes you look more professional and put together. And therefore, sponsors or people going to interview you are going to take you seriously, right? Because you look like you have this brand and you put together. It can also be really fun for students. Trust me, from personal remembrance, ordering camo pink dry fit t-shirts for the race, and all the boys desperately wanting to wear that camo pink, no matter what I said. So sometimes it can also just be something fun that you can all look forward to, is building that brand together. And lastly, and again, one of my favorite areas, is utilize your community. You really, really have a lot of opportunities for PR. You just kind of need to look. So I'm gonna tell you guys something, and it's gonna absolutely blow your mind. You are involved in something really cool. Solar car racing is absolutely wicked. And I guarantee you there's not a lot of people who are involved in it, which makes you like really cool and awesome. And I guarantee you, on top of that people are going to think it's really cool and awesome. So you just need to tell them that, right? Like, you just need to share it. So you're going to have so many people who are going to think that this is really amazing. You just need to reach out and say, hey, I've got this really amazing thing. I'd love to share it with you. Local news in your town is a big one, or even your high school or whatever organization you work near, if they have a paper. that's a great one to utilize. And I promise you, they'll be like, wow, what a neat thing to write about. I know one of my favorites was going to local elementary schools when they'd have science fairs or different things. It may not exactly get you sponsors per se, right? Like presenting to elementary school kids, but it will give you experience. And that's huge for your team and something to utilize. So always be on the lookout for PR opportunities. There's plenty of them. You may have to kind of ask, but I promise you there are a lot of them. So don't feel stuck and feel like you can't get any of these things. You just kind of have to start, and then trust me, once you start presenting in things, the interviews and whatnot, they'll keep coming. So just keep optimistic and keep looking out for it. But of course, above all, like, enjoy showcasing these incredible things that you're accomplishing, because you really do deserve the recognition, and you will get that recognition when you're putting them on display, when you're public relating, and how important that can be for your team. So enjoy that time that you get being able to kind of show off how awesome you are and all the hard work you've put in, because you deserve it. And of course, thank you guys for sticking with me on my spiel. I hope it wasn't too bad. I did include my email, and I can answer any questions if you do want to pop anything in the Q&A. I'm more than happy if anybody wants to reach out. You're more than welcome to. But I really appreciate it, and I appreciate kind of the whole Solar Car Challenge family for letting me come on and chat with y'all again, because it's always a joy. But that's all I have for here, unless anyone wants to have any questions.
Thanks, MacKenzie. I will open it up for any questions that anyone has, but certainly appreciate your presentation. And I know that, a lot of times people see, public relations as just like, well, I didn't get into solar cars to do public relations, but it's really important, right? You got to be able to talk to your sponsors. You got to be able to talk to your community, and you just get a wealth of benefit from that outside of engineering. It's a great way of expanding past your engineering thoughts, and learn how to do more public speaking and reaching out to people through all that effort.